Welcome, everyone, to the Country Club Leaders Podcast. Today, our guest is Jim Antkiewicz. Jim is the Pro Emeritus at the club at Nevillewood in Nevillewood, Pennsylvania. To give you a little background, Nevillewood was selected as one of the most distinguished clubs in the USA by Boardroom Magazine. And he's got a pretty lengthy biography, and it's pretty impressive. I'm a retired golf professional and general manager, and Jim has an incredible resume. He was named in 2008. He was the PGA National Golf Professional of the Year, which is basically the highest honor you can get as a golf professional. He's a member of the National PGA of America Hall of Fame. He served on the National PGA of America Board of Directors for 8 years. He was the section president for the tri-state section of the PGA of America. He was a rules official for several PGA championships and Ryder Cups. And the two things I was most impressed with was he served on the board of the First Tee in Pittsburgh, and he introduced over 3,000 inner city kids to the game of golf. And that's pretty impressive. Out of all those accolades, those two stood out for me the most, because that shows that his heart's in the right place. Welcome, Jim.
Well, good morning, Leo. Good afternoon, good evening to you. Very kind for you to have me on, and thanks for that nice introduction there. Very humbled by all those nice things that you said.
Well, it's an incredible resume, and it's easy for me to read them off on a piece of paper, but you had to actually do all that work over all those years, and that's a lot of work that you did, a lot of good work.
Well, it's funny, Jim, because I never considered any of that with the word work. I did all those things. I went to work all those years because I loved what I do, and I love. I'm probably more of a giver than a taker. So my goal was always to make somebody else's day better, or try to contribute to making them enjoy their day at the golf course.
And you know what? It doesn't get any more complicated than that. That's a couple great lines right there that we all should follow on and off the golf course.
I've always, I don't know if I don't think I'm smart enough for this, but one of my mentors probably told me that somewhere along the way that if you just do the right thing, if you do what's right, everything usually works out. And I really believe that. Might not work out in the short run the way that you want to, but in the long run, things usually triumphs, and hard work, and if your heart's in the right place, and you give back, things work out for you, both financially, professionally, spiritually, all those ways.
Well said, Jim. Can you tell us about the first time you picked up a golf club? What was that like?
Well, I'm going to give you a little prelude to tell you where I came from. I grew up in a little town called Ambridge, Pennsylvania, which was about 15 miles north of downtown Pittsburgh. And I would always say 15 miles north of Three Rivers Stadium, because I hung out there a lot as a kid, going to ball games, growing up. I lived in this little town that was named after, Ambridge was named after American Bridge, which was a large steel producer, produced the steel for the St. Louis Arch. Pittsburgh at the time was the steel capital of the world. And there were steel mills up and down the rivers the Three Rivers of Pittsburgh, for easy transportation. The one that kind of still boggles my mind is Jones and Laughlin steel mill, J&L, was 17 miles long. And
wow,
it would take you an hour to just drive from one end to the other with traffic. So I grew up in this little town, and there was a 9-hole golf course there called Ambridge Country Club. It was a thriving place. The steel business was booming. Small businesses in the town were thriving. There were 7 Catholic churches in the town of Ambridge, all with different ethnicities. There was the Italian church, the Polish church, the Slovenian church, and one of the masses every Sunday morning was in the native tongue of the ethnic members there. So no question that the steel business thrived, and there were a lot of customers, a lot of executives, and Ambridge Country Club thrived at that time. I lived 2.5 miles away from that golf course. And one day, a bunch of my buddies, back in those days, you could go to the ball yard or the football field or whatever and not have anything to worry about. So we would, as kids, you'd go and you'd play sports all day long. Well, one of my buddies' brother and his pals said they needed caddies at Ambridge Country Club for the weekend, and they needed kids to work. So next thing you know, I'm on my bike going there. No experience, no mandated federal working papers for kids under 12 or under 16 to work. I was a big kid, and next thing you know, I'm parking my bike, and Red Shiverini, the pro superintendent, said to me, "Take these 2 bags, kid. You can handle them." Never been on the golf course before. And I did okay. I carried 18 holes, 2 bags on my shoulders. I had 2 nice golfers to caddy for. It ended up making like $25-$30 in 1968, something like that.
Very good.
And the next thing you know, I'm there the next day, and I'm there the next day, and I'm there the next day. And I keep putting money in my pocket. And as a 12, 13-year-old kid now, this was doing pretty good. Well, Mondays were caddies days. And you could play on Monday morning from 8 to 12. Not 12:05 or 12:02, 12 o'clock noon. And, of course, all the other caddies played. Next thing you know, they asked me, "Why don't you come? Why don't you come this Monday?" So I would ride my bike there all the time. No clubs, ended up playing 18 holes off the golf course by noon. We would not be on the golf course any longer than 12 o'clock. And that's how I started playing golf. I always had a good knack for a stick hitting a ball. I was a good baseball hitter. I couldn't catch it for anything, but I could hit it. And I could hit a baseball that's being thrown at me. You think you could hit a ball just sitting there? Well, not as easy as everyone thinks. But that's how I started playing golf. That's how I grew up caddying, playing golf on Mondays, and then all of a sudden, after caddying or working in the bag room there was a chance that some of us would find holes 2, 3, and 4 in the back woods back there, and kind of sneak through the back. And next thing you know, we're playing golf at 7:30 with nobody around. We saw a cart coming over the hillside or a maintenance vehicle. We would head to the woods as fast as we could, but I'm sure they knew who it was, and it was us. But that's how that's how I started playing golf. So it was, you'd have your little Sunday bag full of golf clubs, small canvas bag, that clubs I bought at a hardware store in Ambridge. Back in those days, you can go out and buy a 7-iron, a wedge, a driver. You could buy a single club. And I making my money. I would go and I would add to my set all the time. So that's how I play. That's how I learned I started to play golf. I don't know if I probably didn't learn to start playing golf till high school, even maybe freshman year of college.
Did anybody give you any lessons, or did you just copy the swings of club members?
Copy swings of club members. I read every magazine I could. Watched golf, the limited golf on TV back in those days that you could. And I would, I'd hit it all over the place. I could hit it far. I couldn't hit it. I wasn't overly long, but I could hit it a little further than everybody else because of my height. I'm 6'4". But we would go and we would play, and sometimes there was just me. Sometimes there were 2, 3 of us. We would play Mondays, and then we started venturing out. My dad worked. He played golf, but not. He worked a 9-to-5 job, so it was weekends or in the evening in the summers. He provided for us. We had a very modest living, and I needed to work. I needed to caddy if I wanted to go to college. And then the next thing you know, I kind of graduated from the caddy ranks after we caddied to working in the bag room, to cleaning carts, to and then I really got promoted and was able to use the rotary mowers out on the golf course and use the Sand Pro to rake bunkers. Those were my summer jobs, and with that, I kind of connived my way into telling the pro that I'll do all this, but I want to be able to play. I don't want to say whenever I wanted to, but during uncrowded times, and he let me do that.
Right. Good.
So that's how I played. I took lessons, and then as I got more into it, I started working. I started taking lessons. I took some lessons from a club. Well, he wasn't a club pro. He was a driving range pro. He owned a huge driving range, miniature golf, batting cages, ice cream stand. A fellow by the name of Chuck Scally. Chuck played in 17 major tournaments in his life. Good,
wow.
Player, very good player. Basically, they were the PGA Championship and the U.S. Open.
Right.
He so he was about 5-6 miles away, and I took some lessons from him. Went to college. Went to a little local college that I commuted to every day, named Geneva College. with a degree in accounting.
Let me cut you off 1 second, Jim. Were there any junior tournaments in the Pittsburgh area when you were a kid growing up?
No, junior golf was not even close to what it is today. There could have been, but at that time, I was not a country club member. I was a country club employee. I was a public course golfer that was able to play. The big thing was high school golf. I could play high school golf. And I did.
Right, okay.
I did. Back in those days, it was 18 holes too. Now it's 9-hole matches. So you'd play it. You'd get excused from class in September at noon and go play at 2:00 somewhere and play 18 holes, and we're home at dark. Seemed a little excessive, but those things worked.
Right.
Things seem to work a lot better back in those days than they do today. That's just a personal opinion. So that's how I played, and I didn't get to play in any golf tournaments probably till I got to college.
Okay.
So I worked at college, and always had aspirations back in those days that I wanted to be a tour player. I wanted to play. I wanted to play tournament golf, and candidly, I was weak, low on the talent scale, and low on the financial resources to do that. I played. I was a good player. I wasn't a great player. So things were progressing along, and in 1978, the PGA Championship was being held at Oakmont Country Club. So you're John Mahaffey won in a playoff with Tom Watson and Jerry Pate. And they were looking for volunteers to marshal the golf course for the week. Well, that was right up my alley. I was going to be able to go to Oakmont Country Club to work. And, it was a volunteer job. But you had a uniform. It was August. It was hot as could be. And back in those days, I think at that time, there were 41 club pros that played in the PGA Championship.
Okay.
The 41 club pros were at that time the 41 section champions.
Right.
They were not. There was no National Club Pro Tournament or PNC or whatever they call it today, but it was the 41 section champions. The section champion from the Tri-State PGA, our home section, was Roy Vucinich, who worked at Allegheny Country Club in a little town called Swickley, not far from Ambridge. So I go there to work, and I am just beside myself seeing the size and the enormous size and the majesty of Oakmont. And lo and behold, on Tuesday, I'm on the 16th tee. We marshaled the 16th hole, long par 3 hole, 220 yards, 230 yards back in those days. I think it's now 280. And Roy comes to the tee, and he kind of looks at me inadvertently and nods, and we started talking, and there was a weight on the tee, and next, it's like, well, I tell him that I would like to be a tour player, and he had said, "Did you ever have any thoughts about maybe getting into the club pro business?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "Well, if you're interested, call me in the spring." So the tournament ends on Sunday, and it's Monday, and I'm looking at my checkbook, and I'm looking at my dad's checkbook, and there's the funds are going low, and I still got 2 years of college to go. So I decided I'm going to call him. I said, "What's the worst this could do? At least he's could see if I'm going to show some interest that maybe he can hire me next year." Allegheny Country Club is the area of Swickley Heights is the highest per capita income in the state of Pennsylvania. And it was not only full of office executives, it was an old money club, very old money. One of the members there was Carol Semple Thompson. Although she wasn't the member, her mother and dad were. Carol played. Carol won the U.S. Amateur in '73. This is '78. Yeah, 1978. So she wasn't far removed from being a great amateur player. Her dad, Harton Semple, was the president of the USGA somewhere around 75, 76 also. So wow. It was very steep in golf lore, golf tradition, and it was definitely right. a club of very affluent people. So I went. I called Roy. I said, "Hey, Roy, Mr. Vucinic, is there any? I'm really interested in next year." He says, "Why don't you come and talk to me on Friday at lunch? Bring your resume." I said, "Okay." So I show up. He talks to me for 10 minutes. He says, "You want to start Monday?" He goes, I'm losing a couple of people to go who are going back to college. I need some help. I'd love to have you start if you can. I said, "Well, I go to school too, but my classes end at 11 o'clock every day. I could be here at 12:30. Lo and behold, I start working, and I worked there from that day to to probably December of 1983. I worked basically every day at Allegheny Country Club. And it was a great, absolutely fabulous facility to work at, and an outstanding learning experience that I had to become. And Roy taught me a lot of the nuances of being a club professional and how to handle yourself, not beside learning how to play and do the intricacies of the job.
So you got lucky right off the bat, hooking up with a good club and a good guy.
I did. Roy and I are still very close friends to this day. He's actually the golf pro emeritus there, golf professional emeritus. He left when he turned 50. He started trying to qualify for the senior tour, and back in those days, there was Q school. 8 guys got the low 8 made it every year through the qualifying process. Well, he went for a couple years and didn't, played well, but didn't play well enough. Well, lo and behold, when he was 53, I think 52, 53, he went and he finished like 4th in Q school. And he, at that time, he left and went to play full time on the senior tour. And he probably played there for a good 5 years, full time, 5-6 years, and then maybe 5 or 6 years at on a part time level. He's probably 75-ish, 76 now.
Okay.
And he still plays in all the winter tournament programs and the local events. In fact, he won our section championship, I'm going to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and was the oldest winner ever
Beautiful.
of any section event, any
Wow.
section championship ever in the history of the PGA. So he a great player, a better person.
And he takes care of himself.
Yes, he does. Probably, I know you want to hear a couple of my stories, but probably the best story that I heard is when he was 60 years old. There's a bunch of us, a couple of his members, playing golf, and there was a great player that was 10 years older than Roy. His name was Gary McEwen. Roy goes to Gary, have you broken your age lately? And Gary bellyached and said he's playing bad. He'll never break his age. But Gary's probably 77 years old at the time. And Gary says, well, how about you, Roy? Roy said, oh, I got a few more years to go. Now, Roy's 60 years old at this time. Well, the following week, he goes out and he plays in a section event, and he shoots 59.
That's unbelievable.
And the funny part is, he comes in, and there's a young golf professional sitting at the table. And the scorekeeper says to Roy, what did you shoot? Roy says, you're not going to believe this, but I shot 59 today. And the young fellow just throws up his scorecard, doesn't even turn around, looks at Roy in the air and says, I shot my all-time best today, 64, and I got beat by 5 shots. I thought, that's just great. So yes, I had a very, I was very fortunate to be on the 16th tee at Oakmont during that event, and get hired and make the phone call and go to work at Allegheny.
Nice. So what was the next stop after Allegheny?
So after that, is probably a lot of people understand. It's 1983, and I always kind of like kept my I could keep my chronological order by major championships that came to the Pittsburgh area. In 1983, Oakmont held the U.S. Open. That was won by Larry Nelson that year. I was anxious to become a head professional at my own place. The last year or two, before that, I applied for a number of jobs and got everything from did not get an interview to getting an interview and not making the final cut. And I got hired that fall, that November, December. I got hired at a place called Highland Country Club, just outside of downtown Pittsburgh. And I replaced a fellow there named Art Tuckey, Tucke, Art Tuckey. Art was an old school golf professional. And he was at Highland for 54 years.
Wow.
And I replaced him. I was probably, that was 1983. I was 25, 26 years old at the time.
You were pretty young when you got your first job.
Yes. I was told that a lot. It's like, how did you get that job? Well, I said, I don't know, but probably I buffaloed my way through that interview and process and got hired. And I was there for 12 years. It was,
nice.
Again, Leo, you and I are in the same age group. Some of the younger guys today won't understand this. Us old timers would. Highland was a thriving club full of small businessmen. And after the golf course was packed during the day, the grill room and the card room was packed at night. And there was the parking lot was always full. It was anything from gin games to poker games to bridge games to shooting. I mean, things were different back in those days. Liquor laws were different. The employment situation was different. But the locker room, the grill room was packed, and little clubs thrived. Well, back in the 80s, the steel business started to go south in Pittsburgh, and so did small business, and so did private country clubs, small places. And Highland was no different. It suffered.
Right.
Once that had 30 names on the waiting list, now had 30 openings.
Right.
And I knew it was probably time for a change. And in 1992, there was a wave of new golf courses being built in the Pittsburgh area. One was, the big designers at that time were the big three of the previous golf generation, which was Nicklaus, Palmer, and Player. And all three of them built a golf course in Pittsburgh. Palmer Pittsburgh being close to his home in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Built Treesdale. Gary Player designed a golf course called Diamond Run. And Jack Nicklaus designed a golf course called the Club at Nevillewood. Nevillewood opened in 92. It's a residential community, upscale private club that struggled at the beginning. It was owned by the four developers who had this vision of building a world-class golf course in Pittsburgh. They attracted a number of members at a lot of the smaller clubs who wanted something bigger and better. And but the cost of building the facility ended up being a lot more than they budgeted, ended up about $22 million total.
Wow. Wow.
That was the early 90s.
It's a lot of money.
They ended up selling Club Corp of America wanted to buy the facility, but the members, especially the residents, banded together, came up with a deposit, found a bank to lend them money, and bought the club from the developers. It was a little lean in those days, and they ended up wanting to start fresh with some staff, and they ended up hiring me around 1995. I took over as the golf professional there. They wanted the golf professional to own their own shop. They wanted to get out from having that nut of having to finance an inventory, and they hired me. I was there for 26 years. The place has grown, thrived, developed. The home lots are probably about 400 homes there, have all sold, upscale homes. It's probably 10 minutes. It's right between between downtown and the airport, about 7-8 miles out of downtown Pittsburgh. And at the time, it was a who's who of Pittsburgh individuals who were the who's who of the city. I was there for 26 years and couldn't have landed in another great place that, again, I kind of got lucky and stayed there. They for some odd reason, I retired 3 years ago, and for some odd reason, they made me golf professional emeritus. So I guess they still wanted me to abuse them more since didn't want me to leave yet. So I'm there a lot. I play a lot with my friends there.
So Jim, after hearing all this, it sounds like luck has nothing to do with it. You were at Allegheny for 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to this Highland for 12 years.
Yes.
And then you go to Nevillewood, the club at Nevillewood for 26 years. Based on what I know, you must be a pretty patient and decent person, because that's not easy to do. That's a great resume.
It's funny because I stole a lot of information off of other golf professionals that helped me with my success along the way. And I use the word stole in quotation marks. There was a fellow by the name of Butch Bird. Butch Bird was a golf professional from, I think, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, a friend of Bob Ford's. And Butch came to Pittsburgh, and Bob and him did a seminar on, it was 2 parts. The morning session was how to handle yourself as a golf professional at a private club. And Bob did the afternoon session. He led the afternoon of teaching and playing. Butch had some great lines. One was, if you want to be a golf professional at a nice club, check your ego in your car before you walk in the clubhouse.
For sure.
If it's between you and the club president is going to win every time. He had some great, in one of the, you would never think this, but a club professional for the first time goes to a formal dinner, and there's 18 forks, 7 spoons, 4 wine glasses, 8 plates at your table. And what are you to do without looking like you're some odd duck out there? Butch told you, like, he taught you, like, what every fork represented, what every wine glass represented, so that when you went to one of these functions, you knew how to handle yourself. I think those things were very informative. And the ego question also, the ego statement was always rang true with me. Another fellow that really helped me was not a PGA member, but back in those days there was a footwear company called Etonic. They would be a competitor of FootJoy today, and Etonic has gone by the wayside, but they would give each section revenue to hold education seminars in the spring or fall for PGA members and apprentices. And one of the speakers was a professor who taught at New York City University and the University of Haifa in Israel, named Dr. Aryeh Nesher.
Yeah, I remember him.
Dr. Nesher, probably the best way to picture him is he was a short, heavy-set version of Albert Einstein with the long hair on the side.
Right.
And he would speak on his topics were public speaking and negotiations. And he really taught and gave me a lot of assistance on how to negotiate contracts, and how to see things from the other side of the table and turn some of that into positives for you. I thought that was extremely helpful in my time. And my accounting background at Geneva College was really was helpful along my way too, especially owning my own shop for. God, I owned my own shop for, of being a head professional for 38 years. I owned my own shop for 35 years.
So you had a degree in accounting from college?
Yes.
Very nice. Very good.
But the one thing that I haven't talked about this since the beginning of our talk is I still love to play. I love to play. Okay. I love to play and I love to compete. And I could go to the range and I could go to the range at 8 in the morning and stay till dark. I could do that all day long. Just hit balls. I just love to hit balls in practice. You can't do that at the facility you work at, but you can find 20 minutes here and there a couple times during the day to do that, especially if you know the right times and the right place on the range to go. But I mean, gosh, I remember, when PGA Golf Club still had the practice facility there, you could pay one fee and hit balls all day long, and it was like, man, this is fabulous. I'll spend all day here. So I love to play, and I still play. I still play, and I practice a lot. Father time is, I would say, maybe 2 up after 11 holes, and we're moving along with a bunch of aches and pains, but I still got a couple good shots left in my bag, and still play as much as I can.
So you know what I'm getting at all this? You have tremendous people skills. You don't get to where you are without tremendous people skills. And then I'm saying your mother and father must have been pretty good at raising you.
Well, I wasn't the only child, but I was the only child that grew up in my house. And the reason being, I had a sister pass away who was 2 years old, and was older than me, and she passed away with pneumonia. But I was the only one that my parents raised. And the one thing, I grew up in a traditional, old school Catholic family, Polish Catholic family, went to the Polish Catholic Church, was very active in it. They taught me, and I said this in a couple of my speeches, they taught me, they were great teachers of the English language to me. One being, they taught me words like integrity and ethics and hard work and commitment. They taught me what those words meant. And they taught me not by sitting down with a book, but by example. And I probably, because of them, was able to take those skills and incorporate them into my life. I know the one thing that I think that my friends who are fellow club pros, friends outside the business, the one thing that they are amazed that I do is that members, staff, for some reason, always confide in me for a lot of their personal and family and job issues. They come to me with their situations where they're looking for advice, and it's not just a young kid deciding on which college to go to. When I was at Nevillewood, there was one of the original members, and his wife were members, founding members of the club. The wife passed away after about 5 years of my tenure there, from a bout with cancer. And Jeff was a very active golfer. They were both very active golfers. And about 3-4 years later, Jeff started to bring a guest up, and the guest was female. And next thing you know, about a year or two later, Jeff put her on the membership. Well, Jeff calls me one day. It's a Friday in the spring. And he says, "Jim, I need to talk to you in private. Are you there? Are you in today?" I said, "Sure." It's like, oh God, what happened now? It's always my first thought. So he comes in my office, shuts the door, and he says to me, "What would you think if Karen and I got married?" And my first thought is, oh God, I thought this was going to be some type of, who insulted you, who broke your putter, what's missing out of your golf bag, who lost your umbrella, what would you think? It's like, and then it's like, why are you asking me this? And then it hit me, because he values my opinion. And it's like, Jeff, it's really none of my business. Personally, it's none of my business as a staff member as a staff member of the club. It's none of my business what you do. As your friend, congratulations. Good for you. And I was just always amazed at things like that people would seek me out for counsel when you would least expect it sometimes. We had this little event at Nevillewood. We did it for 12.
Well, let me cut you off there. I would say the reason they sought you out was because you cared. They wouldn't seek you out if you didn't care about them. And that, again, it goes back to you're a good guy. Good people skills and a good heart go a long way.
Well, there's no question. I mean, I wore my job on my sleeve and took my job home. I took my job home a lot, especially the bad days. But I would always park that. I'd leave that in the car when I came into the door with my family. I would try to make sure that I didn't bring the burden of the lost umbrellas and all those things that and it's like just like everybody else, you cringe at all the little things that you forgot to do. I remember one day, a member by the name of Chuck Pryor sees me in March. Okay, "Hey Jim, June 10th, I got 3 foursomes coming. Put me on the book, 1 o'clock." "Sure, Mr. Pryor, happy to." This was the day before electronic tee sheets. Okay, pencil and paper tee sheets. "Sure, Mr. Pryor, happy to." Well, of course, here comes June 10th. Okay, here comes Chuck Pryor and all his guests for lunch. And it's like, oh shit, is today the day? It is. We got him off the, and whenever I would have a situation like that, I always thought, okay, you got to meet this problem head on. You can't beat around the bush, and you can't try to hide it. It's like, remember that day back in March? Well, don't worry, we'll get you off. I juggled every ball that I could that day with my staff, and we got Chuck Pryor and his 3 foursomes off the first tee without on time. Had to buy a couple drinks for people at the halfway house, but we got him off without missing a beat. And I always thought I could do stuff like that. I always thought that I could handle situations like that. Now, I got to make par on the last hole to win an event. Maybe I'm not so good, but I always thought
I got one for you.
I handled people. I thought I could handle people well.
I got one for you. We had a 3-day member guest at this club I was the assistant pro at.
Mm-hmm.
It was Nassau Country Club on Long Island, and we had guests coming in from all over the United States, And we had a big dinner the night before where they auctioned off teams and blah, blah, blah. And we had everything set up. And this one member comes in, and he was a big guy, and he was retired Marine Corps, something or other. And we all, myself and the head pro, we look at each other. What's he doing here? we didn't have him on any list or anything, right? So, So my boss says, go down to the pro shop and look through the list. If you see an entry from him, throw it in the garbage. We don't have this guy in the tournament, So it turns out he had talked to one of the starters in the parking lot of a local supermarket and said, put me in the tournament,
Yeah.
And the guy forgot, So
kind of like my Chuck Pryor story. March sees me in the hallway,
So we got Mr. Hamber and his guest on Shinnecock and whatever else we'd get him on for the next 3 or 4 days just to quiet him down. But it was pretty scary at one point.
Oh, I tell you what, I mean, we've all dealt with nightmares like that. We used to have an event. We had a celebrity tour event, a 4-day celebrity tour event at Nevillewood for 8 years, and it was sponsored by Mario Lemieux, the Penguin player and the owner. Mario was a member, and it was 2-day pro-am, 3-day celebrities only, and it ended people, everybody from Joe Pesci to John Elway to Dan Marino to Charles Barkley were there. Well, it was sponsored. The title sponsor was Mellon Bank, the largest bank in Pittsburgh at the time, and Marty McGuinn is the CEO of Mellon Bank, and of course, being a title sponsor, he got paired with one of the premier players. And played and comes in off the golf course, and he says to where's Jim? I need to see him immediately. So I get the call on the radio. Mr. McGuinn wants to see you, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. Well, what happened now? What happened now? Okay. So he comes in my office again, shuts the door, and I'm like, oh, God, this is going to be a nightmare. And he says, Jim, we had caddies today. You have no ATMs on property, and I have no money in my pocket, and I'm embarrassed. Can I borrow $50 from you to tip the caddy? It's like, sure, how much more do you need? He goes, I'll send you a check tomorrow. I was like, only in golf could these stories happen. Nowhere else could stuff like this exist. It's just amazing how being at a facility, you these things just develop.
And usually, I know in my case, I make more of it than it really is because I want to do a good job. I don't want anybody pissed off.
So, kind of just moseying along here through my career, I ended up getting involved in the section. I wanted to do stuff. Got on a committee, won a Merchandiser of the Year award one year, ran for the board, got elected. First time, did not get elected. Got elected second time. Next thing you know, I wanted to be an officer. And I became an officer. My first annual meeting was in Charleston, South Carolina, when Will Mann was elected secretary of the PGA. And it's the year, it was the annual meeting after they cut the spots in the Club Pro, in the PGA Championship for Club Pros from 40 to 25. You talk about fire and brimstone at that meeting. Oh, yeah, God. Yeah. That was my baptism into the national spotlight. Bob Ford was our section president. Bob Collins was our vice president. I was secretary. It was Gary Shaw was president of the association. But they alerted the contestants that day. They at the Club Pro Championship, they alerted them on the first tee with a piece of paper that the spots were being reduced from 40 to 25. I tell you what, it was. There's always a couple of days of topics and discussions before the annual meeting commences. Well, those were pretty vocal, and I'm sure played an influence in the election that year. But anyway, that was my first annual meeting. And then in our section, the terms were 2 years, and you could serve for 2 terms. So I was secretary for 4 years, vice president for 4 years, president for 4 years, honorary president for 4 years. So it was a 16-year commitment to do that. Other sections, we're the only section that does that. Tri-State's the only section that does that. Every other section is a 1-year term. You can serve 2 1-year terms. So I did that, and so the next thing you know, it's like I want to be a national director. I want to do that. I want to contribute, and I was our district's national director before I was our section president, and I did both jobs for 4 years. And coached 2 kids' basketball teams in grade school and junior high. So my daughters and my sons. So that was kind of an interesting period of time that, and worked at Nevillewood and served at Nevillewood. And we were a fairly busy family. We did all that, and was fortunate to receive some nice accolades and some awards from the PGA of America. Very humbling experience to be selected as the golf professional of the year. And I can't tell you, the things you think about. As you know, Leah, when you're given that honor, at that time, the award ceremony was at the merchandise show, in the theater there in the convention center, and there's about 2,000 people in attendance. I probably had 60 members fly down for
Nice.
for that presentation with all the other national award winners. But when you're walking up, so you're watching them all, and it's like, man, out of 30,000 people, they selected me. They selected
right.
me. And a lot of things go through your head. Your parents go through your head, your upbringing, all, picking range balls as a kid, getting the cart stuck in the mud when you shouldn't have it out there on the golf course one day. All those things were all those things run through your head. Now it's time for you to speak, and it's like, man, wow, it's pretty overwhelming. And I'm very fortunate and blessed to have had a lot of nice things happen to me, and probably this next story probably had some of the biggest influence on my life of maybe how to treat people, and that is in 1980, I'm working at Allegheny, and I worked, at that time, back in those days, you worked inside the shop and in the bag room at the same time. It was all hands on deck at all times. I wanted a set of clubs, and I needed a staff bag. My friend and boss, Roy Vucinich, was a big Spalding guy at the time. And he said to the Spalding rep that summer, hey, is there any chance you could get Jim a set of irons in a bag? And it was, oh, we're out of money. No money left in the budget. Let's see what we can do in the spring. Well, we went to about 3 or 4 reps like that. And the next, and it struck out all the time until the Titleist rep came on, Pete Kinezevich, in his white coat. And all he said was, I'll see what I can do. 2 days later, Pete comes up the back walkway at Allegheny carrying a red and white staff bag and a set of tour model irons in there, plops them down in the bag room and says, these are for you. It's like, wow. So it's like, I never forgot that. I went on to become a Titleist leadership advisory staff member, which is their highest staff position. And still have the bag. Pete retired probably around 2000, early 2000s. And the sales meeting retirement party for this was a few days before the show in Disney World at one of their huge hotels. And I called Wally Yolina and I said, Wally, I want to speak at Pete's retirement party. I want to speak at the sales meeting. And I'm not taking no for an answer. I was Pete's largest logo golf ball count now at this time. Okay. So I went from sitting in a bag room cleaning clubs to his largest logo account. Okay.
Wow.
And I take the bag with me, the staff bag that he gave me.
Beautiful.
In 1980.
Beautiful.
And Pete knows I'm coming, but he doesn't know that I'm speaking or what I'm speaking about. And I'm introduced. There's like 400 people in attendance. And I come out on stage and I bring the bag. Set the bag down. And now Pete's sitting right at the table, and I just look at him, and he's crying his eyes out now because he knows what that is. Okay?
Wow.
And I tell him, I tell the audience what that bag meant to me. It meant that when there was nobody else to help, he was there. And that bag represents. And every year, my wife says to me, "What the hell are you going to get rid of that old beat up bag?" It's taking up space in the garage. And every year I pick up that bag and I walk down the driveway to put it out with the garbage. And I hear, "These are for you." And I take the bag and I walk back into the garage with it. So that bag is my, I mean, we've downsized now. I still got the bag, and it's like I got no place to put it, but I can't give the bag away because that bag represents to me going from the bag room to being the golf professional of the year. That's what that
right.
bag.
Right. That's a great story. Great story.
So I just think that I've been fortunate in things like that and got a lot of help along the way. And worked hard. I probably would say that working hard, doing things after I came home at 11, 12 o'clock midnight, probably, I don't know how many people do that, but I did that. I know a lot of successful business people who have done that. Because it was 5:30 at night. I was either given a lesson. I want to go hit some balls, and I'd hit balls from 6 to 7. I'd come in at 7 off the range, and I'd go right to the grill room to see how everybody's day was. 15 minutes turned into 45 minutes. And then, and then I'm home at 8:30, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, Anyway, Renee has put up with me for 39 years of marriage now, so I guess it might have been better that I stayed at work and didn't come home at times.
Well, it sounds like you have a safer wife too. So you had a couple of good parents and a good wife to go along with it.
No question. There's no question about that.
And you coach your kids' basketball teams too during all that. That's unbelievable.
I loved playing basketball as a kid. I loved playing. I loved basketball, and in our family, as you know from working in the North, we didn't have any. We didn't entertain or have family over in the summer.
Right.
Christmas Eve, Christmas Day was always at my house because we never hosted a 4th of July picnic. My wife and the kids would go to the picnic. I'd show up at 8:30 at night. There was no, I worked.
Right.
But come wintertime, I would always say I was able to work normal hours from time change to time change. I could,
right.
I could leave. I could work a half a day Sunday in December, provided it wasn't 60 degrees and we had 80 players. But another one of my mentors said to me when my daughter was born, you don't want to wake up 20 years from now and look in the mirror and say, where did the time go? I wish I could have spent more time with her. I wish I could have gone to more of my son's ball games. I wish I would have done that. So this guy woke up when my daughter was 22, and I said, I don't have anything to wish for because I did it. I don't have any regrets.
Very good.
I did not cheat them.
Very good.
Now, there were times where, every time now my daughter played in a lot of junior golf tournaments. Again, must be a family gene because she was a good player. She wasn't a great player. She could play golf. She played high school golf on the boys team at her school and played Division I golf in college and played well as a junior. And I wouldn't miss her events. I might meet her there. My wife would take her. I'd follow her for 18 holes, hop in the car and go back to work. Or be standing behind a tree having to call the shop or a member or whatever. But I would make all my kids' games. Probably only missed a couple. But I thought that was important. I thought it was important that that their dad did not miss them. So in the wintertime, now I have free time. I have more time, not free time, more time. So it's like I wanted. So I started off, when grade school ball, Catholic school, grade school ball, third, fourth grade, and I all the way through eighth grade for both of them. So and they overlapped for 6 years. So for 6 years I did both. So and it was funny because when they were both in high school, it was like I got all this free time now. What do I do? I gave a lot. My golf game, my personal golf game suffered during those times. Maybe suffering is not the right term, but I did not play well. I struggled. My golf game struggled.
Right.
But I didn't play in practice because I was chasing two kids. But
right.
I always remembered I want to look at that guy in the mirror in 20 years and say, I didn't cheat anybody. I didn't cheat them out of their dad. Probably another guy.
Well, this has been. Go ahead.
Last story. It's the mid-90s. At that time, the Tri-State PGA honored somebody as the man of the year, man or woman of the year every year. And that ranged everywhere from Carol Semple Thompson one year to a number of individuals. And it was people who contributed to the game of golf in Western Pennsylvania. In 1995, 1996, that individual was Arnold Palmer. And we had it's funny, you had to revolve everything around Palmer's schedule. So he gave us the date that he was available, and it was at this huge Mountain View Inn in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Huge facility, 600 people for dinner. Being an officer of the Tri-State PGA, I got to sit at table number 1 with Mr. Palmer. He sat right across from me as you were sitting now. And the first hour was a private meet and greet with a number of sponsors. And Palmer couldn't have been more cordial, warm, outgoing, friendly. And he had a few glasses of some high-octane rocket fuel that the glass never seemed to empty. Let's just put it that way. And, it was like, oh boy, this is going to be a great night. I hope there's no potholes. I hope everything goes okay. So he's introduced after dinner, and he gives this speech. Okay, it's a 10-minute standing ovation. Number one. Okay, Arnold Palmer speaks for 45 minutes without notes.
Wow.
On family values. Family values. And what his dad meant to him in his career. I never forgot that speech of what his dad meant to him through his life. And I wanted my kids to have that same thought.
Right.
And he just spoke from the heart. And that's why he's the king. And
right.
Just a great evening. And again, one of those moments in time you don't forget.
Well, Jim, after speaking with you for about an hour and a half now, to me, you are the perfect golf professional. You know, obviously nobody's perfect, but you're pretty damn close. You did everything the right way. You checked all the boxes. You're a great father, great club professional. You gave back to the game. You gave back to the section and the association. And you gave back to kids too, which is a big thing for me. And it's just amazing. You just like a textbook on how to be a golf professional and what's important. And it was incredible to hear your story. It really is. And whoever listens to this is what you should aspire to be if you want to be a golf professional. But Jim did it the right way.
Thanks for your kind words, Lou.
Go ahead.
You know, we all hit a lot of potholes along our road of life, and I think the secret is you got to learn how to negotiate those potholes when you hit them, and you also have to negotiate the good times. That when you have the good times, that you need to be moderate and celebrate them, but also take them with a grain of salt, because in the big picture, you know, it's just a small thing, and that's for the good and the bad of life. So I want to thank you for having me. Kind of an aside, I really enjoy reading your LinkedIn articles. We've had some discussion. I just, you know, it's just like you and I grew up in the same era, and it's like there's so many things that we share and we have in common, and a lot of those are along the same lines of what you're writing. So I just want to congratulate you and keep the voice, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Thank you. Well, thanks again, and hopefully we'll talk again maybe in a year or so and see how you're doing.
Till we meet again, keep it up. You have a great day.
All right, Jim.
All right.
Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.